And Einstein said, knowledge is experience, everything else is just information. So we live in a world that is so information heavy. Why are kids even coming to school still?
Yeah.
Why are teachers in school still relevant? Let a child be a child while he or she is still a child. Why do you want them to rush?
Hello all, welcome to the Learning Curve. Today we have with us Dr. Anjum Babukhan, founder director of the reputed Glendale Group of Schools till 2023, a 20-year stint until she exited as a very successful entrepreneur. Anjum is a Harvard Graduate School of Education alum in Human Development and Psychology. She is the author of the book ABCs of Brain Compatible Learning, and she is the lead consultant at Advantage Leadership Institute. She tops in the country for her pedagogical expertise and is a professional trainer par excellence. She is a TEDx speaker, keynote speaker in national and international conferences, an award-winning educator, a visionary thought leader, and a YPO member. Such a privilege to have you with us today, Dr. Anju, and looking forward to have an insightful conversation with you.
Thank you, Disha.
And great. So what we'll start with is we'll start with something very interesting because you preach both the worlds. You grown up in the US and then pioneered a new model of education in India. What were the tensions you observed between Western pedagogies and Indian cultural expectations, and how did it shape your Glendale approach? Of course.
Yeah, so let's start with bridging both worlds. I think initially it was quite challenging after being born and brought up in the US. I never imagined as daughter of immigrants that I would, one day do reverse migration and move to India. But I did, thanks to Salman. And I think, I really love now to live in the twain. There's a quote by Rudyard Kipling that said, East is East and West is West, and never twain shall they meet. But I think I've replaced the never with ever, and forever, always in twain. And I love it. In fact, yin and yang is like one of my favorite symbols. I kind of combine, the best of the East, the West, the masculine, the feminine, the active, the receptive. So I think that's kind of what approach I've actually taken on in education. As far as the tensions between Indian thought and Western, education, I think when you look at the West is very open, very expansive. You're kind of free to do and choose to pursue what you want, and you have the liberty to do so. And you also have various entry points. You can start and stop and restart multiple times. What I found when I moved to India is that I feel probably due to its large population, there is a lot of competition. There's a lot of stress to get the highest marks possible, to get into very limited institutions of choice or merit based seats of choice in higher education. Therefore, the pressure is there in K through 12 schooling. And it can start as early as, before they even, start the nursery or kindergarten. I think that's basically what the tension is between the two. And they kind of have to choose. Children have to choose in high school itself what stream they want to go into. And that's going to determine where they want to apply for higher education. Whereas in the West, we have a lot more kind of flexibility and freedom. As far as my approach, I think, growing up in the West, I think I took a lot of things for granted. I think I had a very kind of ordinary brought up in the US. But when I came to India, I found that that ordinary was actually, in a sense, a little bit special and extraordinary, whether it was, the type of English that we use, our grammar, our syntax, our vocabulary, our ability to format, present, um, our life skills that we picked up, because we all wanted to have some work experience before going to college or throughout college. So we picked up a lot of organizational skills, life skills, time management skills, having to be self motivated. And I think in India, we have a lot of kind of parent sort of support throughout for a much longer time, whereas we kind of have to harness that independence early on in the West. So I think my approach that we used in our institutions was the whole person approach. It was more holistic. It wasn't, yes, academic excellence was a priority, but so were all the other life skills. In fact, in 2002, when, Glendale was on the drawing board, we talked about life skills. We had a life skills class. We had a value education class. And it wasn't actually till 2005 that life skills was even mentioned in the national curriculum framework. And what we've been doing in terms of our pedagogy for over 20 years, 25 years, I think the national education policy mentioned it in 2020, but we had already been doing it for a couple of decades. So we were definitely ahead of the curve.
That's amazing. I think that you kind of bridged it even before the entire country envisioned it.
Yeah, no, we're very happy. We're 2 decades ahead of the.
From detail, I want to shift the approach. I mean, shift the topic to the book you've written. In your book, ABCs of Brain Compatible Learning, which you've authored, uh, you dive into neuroscience and pedagogy. What do you think is a myth on how do students learn you want to debunk forever?
Okay, great question. So two parts. One about my book. The premise for the book was to back whatever it is that I was trying to have the teachers adopt as a way of teaching, which is the art and science of teaching, is pedagogy. I had to do it not because I'm saying it, but I had to back it up with research. And when I say that research is supporting that this is the best practice, in essence, the ABCs of brain compatible learning was basically my synthesis of all, developmental psychology, child psychology, cognitive psychology, neuroscience, and how is it applied to education and learning. So in essence, basically, when we can learn how we learn, we all get smarter in life. We're, smarter teachers, we work smarter, not harder, and kids learn better. They're more engaged. Now, I think a common myth that you asked me that we need to debunk forever. So the myth that I would probably want to debunk forever is I can think of my chapter B, the body mind connection. I have this really nice infographic that's been used and referred to quite extensively. And in that learning pyramid, I think if we can all understand that, whether we are a teacher, whether we're a parent, whether we're a business leader, and how we are actually training our employees, right, in professional development, when we understand the learning pyramid, we shift how we teach. So in that learning pyramid, lecture neuroscience says we retain only 5%. Now, but most of traditional Indian education is lecture based. It's chalk and talk method, right? The teacher jockeying, the kids passively learning. Another form of passive learning is reading. That's about 10% retention, according to neuroscience. When we see audio visuals, whether it's a picture or a audio visual video, that's about 20%. So you're increasing it by 20%. Demonstration about 30%. But yet, all these are passive learning methods. So we kind of slice that pyramid into half. And when we make the learners become active by, say, introducing a very thoughtful, carefully crafted question, a critical thinking question, a higher order thinking question, a deep dive question, and we ask them, give them some time to discuss it, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, the retention, according to neuroscience, goes up by 50%.
Okay.
Practice by doing 75%. And the secret is that if you really want to learn something, you teach it to somebody else. And neuroscience says that you retain 90% when you actually are in the role of trying to teach it to somebody else. So I think the learning pyramid of how we learn, it's almost kind of flips. When the child gets involved, the more he's involved, the more he learns, more actively he learns.
Great, Ani. Uh, Not just answered from a school's approach, but also from a parent's approach as well. So, just to kind of build deeper into it, do you think there are any myths you would want to again debunk from a child psychology point of view? Because this I'm asking as a parent.
Yeah, that's a great question too. I probably refer to various psychologists often in my training programs, including Piaget, Vygotsky, Eric Erickson's Ages and Stages. But I think something that is relevant to anyone, everyone, not just in school, but probably throughout life is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There It's a hierarchy of human needs. Again, that's a pyramid. And if we can understand what are the human needs that precede intellectual needs, we as educators, we as parents, will, and in any other organization, right, as organizational leaders, we will understand what, if we want to teach them something, we need to make sure there's certain human needs that are met. And the basic is like, your physiological needs, your hydration, your nutrition, you have not had enough sleep, crudely speaking, it would be kind of considered your roti kapra makan, but okay, fine, that's taken care of. We have a roof over our head, we have all that. But in the classroom, um, are kids well rested, well nourished, well hydrated? That's a physiologically. Next would be the safety needs. So not only is physical safety important, that they feel physically safe, they also need to feel socially and emotionally safe. We as educators need to be aware, even as parents, is there anybody bullying my child? Um, intimidating my child. So, at school, we really worked hard to always create a bully-free zone and have a more positive atmosphere. Next would be the need for love and belongingness. Now, this is important throughout life in any organization, institution. How do we belong, right? So, with my teachers, there's a lot of bonding and connecting activities that we would do in our orientation program. And then we kind of set the example that this is what you need to do with your children before you start any type of instruction. Make them feel like they belong in the class. They've made friends. There's been teamwork activities, collaborative, fun games that they participated in. They look forward to kind of coming to their classroom. Their classroom is a safe space where they belong and they have a feeling of connection. Then, after that, the fourth level would be your self esteem needs. So, as an educator, as a parent, or as a leader, we need to help build and encourage the self esteem of the individual. And there's a term called self efficacy. That is the belief in your own abilities, right? Like, I am capable of doing this, that, or the other. So, I think it's very important for the mentor or the educator or the parent or the leader to have that belief that I know you can do this. And they're building the self esteem rather than tearing it down with, destructive criticism. Constructive criticism is good, but not the other type. Then comes intellectual needs. So if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, cut down in the middle, there's 4 different human needs that we need to cover before intellectual needs can be addressed. And kids, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, essentially. You can apply that to employees or members of organizations. They want to know how much you care rather than how much you know.
Yeah, right. That's a very deep thought. Although it feels very basic to know as a leader, as a parent, as a teacher, but I think thanks for putting that out in full detail. Having discussed all this, why do you think these practices, these myths are still hanging on?
I think it's we're a creature of habit, and it's become habit. I think Indian society is largely traditional, so we kind of hang on to what we know, what we're comfortable with. There's a futurist in the 20th century that his name was Alvin Toffler, and I often repeat his quote. He said that in the 21st century, the illiterate is not going to be a person who cannot read, write. It's going to be a person who can learn, unlearn, and relearn. So I think in the fast-paced world, fast-changing world that we're living in, we have to constantly be unlearning and relearning. So that's the thing that I would do with my teachers is I would ask them to unlearn however they've learned and relearn based on research-backed methods. And I would actually have them feel a taste of what that is like. Let their inner child come out and play in the orientation, have them feel bonded and connected and learn with these very, engaging methods. So once they have a taste of it, then they're more likely to implement that as a teacher. Otherwise, by default, they're going to teach the way that they've been taught.
Yeah, true. Right. Just progressing on what we've touched upon about teachers, okay, how they can be molded, their approaches. The Advantage Teacher Training Institute focuses a lot and works with educators through a US lens. What's been that unique insight that teachers gain through this international exposure?
So I think first of all, I'd like to say advantage is, not a US based lens, rather it's a research based lens. We're looking at that through a neuroscience or cognitive sort of lens. And the focus and priority is always learning, right? And we have a mixture of in having them learn this pedagogy, technology, use of technology, critical thinking skills, all the things that are required that I talk about in my book. It's there. The difference that we had in our global teacher development program is that we paired them with a mentor, a seasoned teacher from the US, and in that mentorship, and it doesn't mean that the mentor has to be from the US. It happened to be for a program, so it's called Global. But we can actually pair teachers from anywhere. But that seasoned teacher mentoring or the process of mentoring itself is quite amazing. There's thought exchange, practice exchange. How do you deal with challenges exchange? And also, uh, a shared learning. They both end up developing themselves to a greater degree at the end of that mentoring process.
Great. And that I've seen that come through with teachers at Glendale as well, whomever I've interacted. I've read your honors thesis, Savoring the Positive, and you focused a lot on optimism, which has now become the self-help buzzword. You've written it long before it came out right now.
Ago.
Hey, can you throw some light on that fact?
So back in college, that was my honors thesis, savoring. I love that concept of savoring. In positive psychology, you can parallel that with coping in terms of coping with trauma or negative experiences. In positive psychology, how do you accentuate something that is already good or normal to the next level? So that was a concept of savoring. I think we can kind of compare that to like mindfulness. Um, really concentrating on, how we take in the world around us, our sense of presence and enjoyment through that mindful kind of lens and accentuate whatever we are experiencing in the present. But I also had it in the past and future tense as well. Um, I think that this concept of, just drawing in from positive psychology, I think it really has grown over the years. Our tagline has always been to cherish the experience called childhood, savoring. Let a child be a child while he or she is still a child. Why do you want them to rush, Enjoy each experience. I think with my teachers, I've always talked about the difference in terms of memory as a psychology major. There's a semantic memory and then there's an episodic memory. And the difference is that semantic is filled with all names, numbers, facts, and figures, whereas episodic is experiences. And Einstein said, knowledge is experience, everything else is just information. So we live in a world that is so information heavy. Why are kids even coming to school still?
Yeah.
Why are teachers in school still relevant? It has to be because they're coming for that experience. And when we have that episodic experience, think about when you went on a field trip or you did a school project or you perform. Those are experiences that are multisensorial. You lived it. They're embodied experiences. And that's what we savor. We savor that. We cherish that experience called childhood. And it's not just about drill and kill. There's so much more to be lived.
I think, man, wonderful to know that you've done this long back, like a lot of many years back. How does that foundational mindset kind of reflect in your education philosophy today? Because today's environment is kind of emphasizing a lot on achievement and hustle.
And that's a great question. I think as world has progressed in many ways, but we've also seen, unfortunately, the rise of anxiety and depression. So things such as, self-care, social and emotional learning, these have become quite important. I think probably a recent time that was really challenging for all of us was the pandemic, right? Everyone was in a lockdown. We really had to kind of rethink a lot of things about what we're doing. I mean, we became very, very aware of our fragile existence, right, at that time. So I think in 2020, while I've always had a holistic approach to how we learn, in 2020, I think I had an epiphany. I had written the book ABCs of Brain Compatible Learning, but to me, heart compatible, what is spirit compatible, also started kind of feeling more important. I didn't want to just be cerebral and in the head and just only have academic, because there's so much more to us as a living, breathing body. We have a heart, we have a mind, we have a body, we have a spirit, and we need to have an education system that addresses all of that. So in that epiphany, I felt that no, I want to do ABCs of the heart, the body, the spirit. I thought about that, and I actually created a program. And during the pandemic, that actually became our wellness formula. It was called the whole person approach. We ran, a handful of cycles of that, before our exit at 2023. And it was just beautiful. I mean, I don't think I've ever felt as great as I did as an educator, because it was taking, my 25 years of, educational leadership and pedagogical experience. It was about, habits and self regulation and self efficacy and identity formation. And I applied to Harvard from a formal degree program while I had been going since 2012. But in that time, I applied and I got in the human development and psychology program. So I furthered it with research in all these things like self regulation, identity formation, how it helps the school climate, and all the things for children's well being. And I had the support for it. So now I have the research. So right now I'm writing a book on multiple intelligence, but my next book is actually going to be about the whole person approach. Well, we see this as a whole program that not just schools, but even organizations, corporations, NGOs, anyone can actually really apply it. And this is what the world needs. This is what the world is kind of thirsting for. How do we balance that body, mind, heart, and spirit?
That's amazing. I mean, uh, thanks for kind of digging deep into all your psychology knowledge, and you being a psychology award winner as well. You did touch upon multiple intelligences and Glendale when you were running the school. The school had this entire approach of multiple intelligences, right? Which intelligence do you think is very neglected in the traditional conventional education system right now? And how do you think we can do a better job in actually getting that in?
I think actually, there's about 8 different multiple intelligences, and we concentrated about 7 on them. So existential intelligence was the one that we actually introduced recently, like during the pandemic. I think in that VUCA time of volatile and certain, complex, ambiguous, there was a lot of anxiety about just our existence, right? So it was actually very apt to think about what should be our legacy. Like, what if we are not there tomorrow? What would we want the world to remember about us? What have we done? How have we, led our life, and what has been meaningful and worthwhile to me as an individual? So I think existential intelligence is not touched upon, but nowadays people are talking a lot more about purpose rather than just passion, and I think it's really important as a Harvard, alum in the human development program. I think that that's what we talked about. We talked about in adult development, how is it that we make meaning? in our life, from the human development lens. So existential intelligence helps us to look at the big picture. Where is our place in the world? Uh, what impact are we having? And we are kind of assigning some meaning to it. Oprah Winfrey said that legacy is every life that you've touched. How have you made the world a better place? How have you made the world a better place for yourself, for others, for people in your circle of influence? So I think if we were to include existential or kind of a spiritual intelligence a program, I think that would be great. By the way, it's going to come up in my whole person approach next book project that I have. And I think uh, sometimes people might not be comfortable with existential intelligence, but I think intrapersonal intelligence, which is similar, I think is definitely a must in any and every school, organization. In fact, in my next book on multiple intelligences, I'm going to start with that because we need to know ourselves first. What are our values? What are our motivations? What are our goals? What are our aspirations? How well we know our self determines how we can effectively show up for others. So, as Stephen Covey said, first we have to have a private victory and really know what our strengths are. And then we can be effective with others. So intrapersonal intelligence and existential intelligence are definitely two that I would definitely include.
Great. I mean, we all are now looking forward to the next book which you're going to write, because I think this is something which is very important, as you pointed out.
Yeah, I think, while I was a psychology major in undergrad, I, by default, got into education. I never had intended it that way, but I moved to India and I got married and, uh, you know, we had a school. I started kind of just applying my knowledge to that. And when I came across the theory of multiple intelligence, and I had known about it, I studied about it, but I was looking for something that was more holistic. And I think that was like perfect. I saw a scenario that was very depressing actually for children back in the mid 90s. And I wanted them to understand their God given potential. I think every individual has this immense, multifaceted God given potential, and it's the environment that lets it out, to blossom, to bloom, to flourish. And, this potential is there. It's kind of like a seed. It's about how you nurture and cultivate it that makes a difference. So, another uh, epiphany or thought I had in the pandemic is I coined my ikigai. My ikigai, Japanese, phrase for my reason for being, is that I want to cultivate the full spectrum of human potential. And when we look at multiple intelligence, that's what it is. It's this whole spectrum of human potential. When we think about just intelligence, what is it? It's like this bright light. You shine it through this prism, and out on the other side, you get this beautiful rainbow. So, intelligence, when you break it into parts, is that whole spectrum, how we are in our relationships, how we speak, how we move, how we interact with nature, how we visualize, how we harmonize. I mean, it's all those intelligences, right? And we learn that over time. And I think it suits my definition of education, which is to be enriching, engaging, exploratory, and empowering. And I think that multiple intelligence gives those pathways to create that type of educational experience.
That's very thoughtful, very insightful for us. How do you think AI can help students in pursuing their lifelong learning?
So we can use AI in so many different ways, but I think we need to first become self-aware.
How do you think we can make space for kids who are not brilliant in data-friendly ways?
Competence without character, I feel, is dangerous. We need to build competence, but we also need to build moral ethics and character along with that. We know how to prioritize. We're not looking at things as competitive, but rather collaborative, win-win rather than win-lose. We are, till now, the first and only accredited lighthouse school by Franklin Covey.